Hi there, welcome with me, Cindy Ragney, Oz fan, collector and proprietor of wonderful Books of Oz. So, okay, tell us a little bit about how you got into Oz then.
I was into Oz as a child, mostly the Oz books. I loved to read, and my parents encouraged that. So my father, in particular, would get me Oz books, and he would buy me an Oz book for my birthday, for Christmas. If I was homesick from school, he would go out and troll the used bookstores in Los Angeles and come home with an Oz book. So I read them myself, and I didn't read them in any particular order and had kind of a dilapidated collection, but I loved it.
Was it the stories or the illustrations? What was it that really drew you into the fandom?
For me, it was more the stories, I think. I know a lot of people love the illustrations, and I like them, of course, but what I remember more from growing up and reading them is the stories themselves and the fantasy aspect of it, I guess. I've always loved fantasy and science fiction.
Oh, great. So do you have a favorite Oz book?
I would say Hungry Tiger of Oz is my favorite. Partly because I love animals, and I love sort of the moral dilemma he has in that book. And I also don't eat meat, so I can sort of relate to the Hungry Tiger, I guess, and his persona.
So for people who may not know much about Oz beyond the film, do you want to explain a little bit about Hungry Tiger in terms of that?
Okay, well, Hungry Tiger always wants to eat fat babies, but he can't because he's actually a good guy. And that's basically what his role is in the books, is agonizing over whether eating fat babies or not. And he never does, of course.
And then the book itself, The Hungry Tiger of Oz, that's actually by the second author, isn't it? Ruth Plumley Thompson.
Yeah, so L. Frank Baum wrote 14 original Oz books, and then after he died, the series was picked up by a young woman, Ruth Plumley Thompson, who wrote a number more Oz books, and hers kind of followed along with the basic characters, but also added a number of new characters and adventures in the land of Oz.
How did you get into the conventions and OzCon, which used to be called WinkyCon originally?
Right. I, had my childhood collection, and I sort of forgot about it for a number of years while I was busy in college and young adulthood. And then I was back at my parents' house one time and sort of picked it up and looked at it again and thought, these are really interesting. I wonder, I should learn more about these books. And I started looking into them, what editions they were, and realized that none of them were first editions, which of course I had thought that they were, because most of the Oz books only have the copyright date included, not the actual publishing date. So it's really difficult to know the edition without a lot of research. And so I started doing research. I realized they weren't first editions, and I thought, these are really important to me, so maybe I should upgrade. And so I started buying primarily upgraded books online. And then I would think, well, what am I going to do with these older books? And I would sell them online. And I thought, oh, this is kind of fun. And it just grew from there, where I pretty much upgraded my collection to where I wanted it to be. And then I continued to buy and sell. And then once I did that, I realized, there's this whole group of Oz fans who do these fun things together in the summers. And that was near me. WinkyCon was in Northern California at the time at Asilomar. So I went to my first WinkyCon, I guess, in probably about 2008. And okay. I didn't go every year at first, but since then, since after a few years, then I started going every year and just enjoying the camaraderie. And the auction, of course, was great for me. They have a large auction every year with all kinds of sometimes rare Wizard of Oz related books.
Tell us a little bit then about your store.
I have an online website. It's wonderfulbooksofoz.com. and that's where I sell most of my items. And I specialize in Wizard of Oz and other children's books, primarily older ones, what we would call antiquarian books in the trade. And I also try to branch out from just the books into what we call ephemera, which is usually paper items that weren't meant to be saved or usually weren't saved. Things like ticket stubs or programs, posters, things like that, and letters, autographs, because all those things are interesting to me, and I like to try to not just have the same thing all the time, but to find unique things for people. So I have just an example of some of the things in my store. I have normal, what we think of as typical Oz books, like this is a copy of TikTok of Oz, and this is one written by Baum in originally 1914. But this is actually a later copy from the 1920s. So it's so
it'll have color plates in it as well.
Color plates, yeah. So a lot of collectors like to get these editions because they're not as expensive as the true first edition, but they have these color plates, which are by
that's great.
An illustrator, John R. Neal, who many people know and love.
Yeah.
And so this is, the type of book I try to keep in good condition, and with the color plates, and hopefully not too expensive for most collectors. But in addition to things like that, I also have things like Wizard of Oz related records. Like here are two 45s from the 1960s. And one is one Disney put out, The Scarecrow of Oz, and this is just, I think, an abridgment of the Scarecrow of Oz book. It's read by Ray Bolger, a different version of the Wizard of Oz, and it comes with a little book as well as the 45 record that you can read along. So that's cool. Another item, and sort of related to music as well. I do song sheets and sheet music related to the Wizard of Oz. So this is a souvenir album that came out with the movie, or shortly after the 1939 movie came out. And so it's got some color or black and white stills from the movie here, as well as
it's in great shape.
Piano versions of the actual songs from the movie.
Cool.
Yeah. And finally, I also do things like postcards. And so here's just a kind of unique collage I put together with, I don't know if you can see, let's move it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is a series of 6 postcards from the Land of Oz theme park, which was a park in North Carolina that opened with an Oz theme in the 70s. And so these were souvenir postcards that came out then, and they, showed different aspects of the park, and I've just put them together in sort of a wall-mountable collage here.
Have you been to that park? Because I believe they do a once-a-year kind of seasonal opening.
Right. It closed, I think, in 1980, and then they eventually went back to opening it once a year for people to come for a weekend. And I have not personally been. No, it's kind of far from me here, so I'm not. But I know some people who love it.
So for the sound of it, your store then's got books from pretty much all of the famous 40 writers, authors of the books. It sounds like you've got different ephemera from the movies and from books, and different individual things that people could collect. So if you're a movie fan, there's things to collect. If you really want to collect all of the books or some unusual books, then they've got a wide selection on there as well. I believe you do some of the prints as well, don't you? Some posters I've seen before now, is that right?
Yeah, I do anything related to Oz. I don't usually deal in the original posters from the 1939 movie because they're exceedingly expensive, and they've been reproduced a lot as well. So it's a little trickier to know for sure what you've got and authenticate those things. And I do I'm heavier towards the books and bomb stories than the MGM movie itself, but I know that there are a lot of people who were first introduced to Oz through the movie rather than the books, and so I do try to keep at least some of those items in stock as well.
And is your store only online, or?
I'm mostly online. I do bring my stock to certain events, mostly the Oz conventions, either the OzCon or the Wizard of Oz Club convention, which is a separate convention that is usually in the summer, every summer as well. And sometimes I do book fairs or vintage fairs, things like that. I also, in addition to my wonderful Books of Oz.com website, I do sell other items, non-Oz vintage items on Etsy and eBay, anything that catches my eye. And I'm trying to get more into other types of antiquarian books as well and learning more. Like last year, I went to the Colorado Antiquarian Bookseller Seminar. So there's actually a week-long seminar.
Cool.
That is just for booksellers. Well, there's also some librarians and collectors there, but it's primarily for booksellers to learn more about the trade and how to be successful, because it's kind of hard in this day and age to make a living selling old books, but it was really a helpful week, and I learned a lot. And even though I love Oz, I'm interested in anything. I tend to go off on tangents a lot, and so I'm interested in learning and doing research on other things as well. I really love the research aspect of getting an item that I've never seen before and trying to find out more about it, where it came from, how old it is, how rare it is, things like that. And so this is a really good way for me to do something that's fun for me and hopefully make a little money at it as well.
Cool. I suppose as well, it's probably exciting as a collector because you get to kind of collect these things, but then move them on so you can bring in more stuff and have it for a little while, rather than have a house rammed to the rafters full of books that you can't move.
Yes, I do collect and keep a few things, but I try not to keep everything. And so I primarily myself, I have basically first editions of almost all of the traditional 40 Oz books. And then I collect items by W.W. Denslow, who was the first illustrator of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the first Oz book. And he also did a lot of illustrations for other books. He also did postcards, and I have a number of signed books by him as well. So those are kind of my and ephemera. I try to collect, like, if there's interesting stationery, or Dick Martin, who was one of the early Oz Club members in the 60s, he did a lot of interesting paper items that are related to the Wizard of Oz, playing cards and stationery.
Yeah, he was also, he's classed as one of the official royal illustrators of Oz, isn't he, as well? Because he was the illustrator of Merry-Go-Round in Oz, which was an official Riley and Lee book that was released.
Right.
But he did a lot of stuff, didn't he, for the International Wizard of Oz Club? So there's a lot of his work out there in terms of cards and illustrations.
And signed. He did some smaller books as well that were related to Oz, and some of those that he signed. I have some things like that too. I kind of have a soft spot for him as well, for whatever reason. He was one of the first auctioneers too for the Oz Club, and did the Oz Club auction for a number of years as well. I have a folder of ephemera like that I keep as well. And of course, Bomb Bugles, which is the journal of the International Wizard of Oz Club. I try to have a complete run of those. And I have, I think, almost every one except for 2, I believe.
Wow, that's pretty good going. So for me, I've used Cindy quite a bit now to build up my collection. And what I find is Cindy has got a good range from modestly priced books to some of the higher end, very nice books that have been very well tended for. So no matter where you are with your finances, you will be able to get some rare, antiquated Oz books and build up your collection. Most of my Riley and Lee first or second editions have come from Cindy or from the OzCon auction. So what Cindy's also going to do for everybody today is anyone who's watched this video can use the code OzCon2020. I will post that down below along with a link to Cindy's website. And then you can go on, if you put in OzCon 2020, you're going to get a one-off $10 discount on your purchase. So, you know, Cindy's throwing you a little bit of money in there as well. And you can help out Cindy right now because obviously it's 2020. This is the year of COVID-19 where a lot of the conventions have been cancelled and postponed to next year. And what I'm trying to do as part of the OzConnection channel is to get our vendors and online store proprietors that support the convention. And Cindy is really supporting the convention. Cindy has sponsored the bags for many years now, has a fantastic dealer's room display. Definitely get on to wonderfulbooksofoz.com, use that OzCon 2020 code, and you'll get $10 off.
But I do have a category in my store called Wild and Homeless books, and those are books that so there's a poem about wild and homeless books by somebody famous. I can't quote it for you now, but I liked it. I liked that wild and homeless phrase. So it's basically books that need a little TLC, or that aren't in the best condition but may still have good attributes like color plates or be early editions. And so I don't restore those. I sell them as is at a heavily discounted price for people who are just starting out and maybe don't have a lot of money to build their collections.
Yeah, I've got a couple of wild and homeless items where I don't have that item and it's a starter item, and then later on down the line I'll build up and get maybe a slightly better edition that's a bit cleaner or a bit tighter with the binding.
Right. Yeah. For hardcore collectors, condition is really important. So if you have the means to buy in a good condition if you can, but I understand not everybody does, and so I try to keep some of these books available as they come my way for people like that.
Cool. Okay, so it sounds to me like you're quite the collector yourself, Cindy. Do you have any advice for any Oz collectors or new and budding Oz collectors out there?
Yeah, I would say a number of things. Buy what you like. Build your collection can be unique. You do not have to have a first edition of every Wizard of Oz book in dust jacket. Obviously, most people can't do that.
Yeah.
But what you can do is you can build a collection around a certain focus. For example, if you love the Ozma of Oz character, who's one of the characters in Baum's books after The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, you could build a collection around Ozma of Oz. You could get all the different versions of Ozma of Oz that have been published. You could get original art related to Ozma of Oz, things like that. If you like colorful books, you could have a collection of Oz books with red and pink bindings, something like that. If you're a special fan of Judy Garland in the movie, you could collect things related to Judy Garland. So everybody's collection is unique, and you don't necessarily need a lot of money to delve into some of those other areas, And then I would say buy the best you can in terms of condition. Not everybody has the means for that, but generally, if you're going to collect for a while, you'll find yourself wanting to upgrade your copies eventually as you learn more, and you'll want better copies. So if you can, buy books that are in good condition. I would say, try to buy. Sounds self-serving, but it's not really. I try to buy things from sellers with some experience, because a lot of sellers on eBay, for example, and I'm not knocking eBay because I do buy and sell on eBay, but you got to be really careful.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy a book from a seller that has a one-sentence description with 2 spelling errors in that sentence, because they probably don't really know very much about the book, and they may be describing it wrong. you need to see lots of pictures to really know what the book is in terms of edition. Get good reference books. Of course, there's Bibliographia Oziana, which is the older reference to the basic Oz books. And there's the Book Collector's Guide to L. Frank Baum, which is a more recent book that also includes all the other books Baum wrote besides Oz books and his books that he wrote under pseudonyms. And, you know, think outside the box. Go to the Oz conventions in particular, and go to the auctions that the club puts on, because you can find sometimes really rare material there. So those are kind of the main points. Also, you take care of your books. Most people know to not obviously keep their books dry and, you know, don't tear them and things like that. But people maybe don't think so much about things like keep your books out of the sun. In other words, if you have a bookcase that's directly downstream of a window and it's getting sun all the time, you're going to find pretty quickly for some of the inks that those spines will fade and they won't look nearly as nice. So take care of your collection that way.
I think that's some great advice. I think with some of the books that you've been speaking about, what people being wary of eBay is there is some great stuff out there, but if they don't know what they're talking about, they could be telling you something's first edition when it is not. And that could be it's a later edition, or it could be there's been a reprint that looks like the original. So you do need to be careful. But there are lots of fan pages around as well. There is some Wizard of Oz collecting pages where you can ask people as well. And people like me or Cindy and other Oz collectors will turn around and give you advice on how to look out for the right book.
That's a really good point. Yeah, Facebook has a lot of things going on in terms of Wizard of Oz collecting, and lots of people on there can help you.
Yeah, and I'm certainly, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a first edition, and make sure it is a first edition, and find out the questions that you need to ask. And that's something I learned pretty early on in my collecting. And you're right, everyone's collection is a little bit different. For me, it's always been about the books more than anything else, and the books with the illustrations. So I started off on earlier editions like the Del Rey editions and the Dover editions, and then I moved up to the Books of Wonder editions, and then now I'm starting to collect where I can, either a first edition or at least an early edition with colour plates. And everyone's a little bit different. I know other Oz fans who collect one particular book and like different spines and different versions. I like to just have one nice, neat edition. And then I will then move on to either making a neater version of that, and I won't tend to collect too many of the same book.
Yes, that's how I am too. Yeah, you can't collect everything. You can try, but it'll drive you nuts. So it's good to focus a little bit.
So you've been coming to the convention since 2008. Do you perhaps have any specialist OzCon items that people might be interested in from the conventions?
Yeah, so normally I collect special items throughout the year that I take to OzCon to sort of showcase them and sell to people who I know will appreciate them there. And since we're not going to be having that this year due to the virus problems, I do have a few items that I'll show that aren't on my website, or that will be on my website by the time people see this video, and are sort of special items that I've saved for OzCon viewing. So this is the first item. To come back a little bit, this is original artwork by Scotty Young, who is an illustrator for the Marvel Oz series that Eric Schanauer has created. And so this is actually an original large panel from one page from the Marvelous Land of Oz comic. And it's page 8 in volume 4. And it's signed at the bottom with his, somewhere there, here.
Very nice.
His name. And what's nice about this one, too, is that Eric Schanauer has written a special note on the back here about this particular piece, which I'll read. And it says, for this comics adaptation of L. Frank Baum's The Marvelous Land of Oz, I included material from Baum's stage version of his book, the musical flop, The Woggle Bug. The scene on this page of original art by Scotty Young incorporates a scene from The Woggle Bug. Ginger and Mombi debate and vie for power, and it's signed by Eric. So I actually have this one. I have 3 others that I've obtained, and I'm going to be listing soon.
Oh, wow. So for those that don't know, Eric Shanower is a major friend of OzCon and regular attendee, is a illustrator and writer and in continuing the Oz series in many different ways, and good friend of both of ours. Scotty Young is quite a famous Marvel illustrator for Marvel Comics, and I believe has done a lot with the X-Men series. And they're very nice books, so that's going to be quite an exclusive to purchase from your website when it's up, which again, I'll put the link down below at this video. Anything else you've got then from?
Yeah, I've got 2 other things. So this is a first edition of The Boy Fortune Hunters in Panama, which is a book that L. Frank Baum wrote under a pseudonym, Floyd Akers. And it's sort of a traditional boys' book of the period. And this one's really special because it's probably the nicest copy I've ever seen. It's just in really amazing shape. And it also has color plates, which most of these Boy Fortune Hunters printings did not. Only the first edition, first printing of this one. And it's got these lovely color plates. It has 5, which is as they issued, which is an odd number, but that's what it has throughout.
Yeah, so, it looks really new, that.
Yeah.
That's a really nice copy.
Usually the paint flakes off in these white portions, but it's pretty much all there, and the spine's just amazing too. So that's a really nice thing.
Thank you for joining us, Cindy. It's been great to see you, especially as I won't get to see you this year, but I will be back next year for OzCon, which will be running next July. We'll update more on that over the summertime. Just a reminder that if you go to Cindy's webpage, which is what again, Cindy? Do you want to tell everybody one more time?
It's wonderfulbooksofoz.com.
And I'll put that link down below, along with a reminder to use the discount code OzCon2020, which will get you $10 off your first purchase using that code. And you'll know, and you've seen Cindy now, and I'm sure you can. Do you have any ways of people getting in touch with you, Cindy, if they want to ask you anything?
Yeah, there's a contact tab on my website. And also I have a Facebook page, which is the same, Wonderful Books of Oz, and they can message me there as well.
Great. I'll put a link down to that below as well. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Colin. It's great talking to you. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.